Looking at the role of the director in a public gallery, we looked at two galleries. We went to the National Gallery of Victoria and we went to the Mornington Peninsula Regional Gallery. At the Mornington Peninsula Regional Gallery, we had a talk from Jane Alexander. She was the director of the MPRG, and she talked about the focus of the gallery being works on paper, and the National Works on Paper exhibition being an annual exhibition and an acquisition exhibition. She then went on to say the director's role was wide-ranging, overseeing gallery operations and dealing with people externally. The roles and responsibilities included oversight of finance, buildings, staffing, partnerships, agreements and contracts, business, negotiations with travelling exhibitions, liaising with shareholders and writing annual reports. The MPRG financing comes from the Shire of the Mornington Peninsula, the Victorian Government through Creative Victoria and through philanthropic organisations who they really need to nurture and take care of. Jane then went on to mention the relationships that were important for the director to nurture. The Friends of the Mornington Peninsula Regional Gallery were very important. They provided their base support. The Shire councillors need to be involved and educated. So Shire councillors are up for election. If a new councillor comes on board, they need to be looked after and explained what the gallery is all about. So they'll support it in the long term. The director is involved in staffing, interviewing for new staff, doing staff performance reviews, which are probably on an annual basis, managing staff, that means the workload so that they can work their finances out by not having them working too much overtime, that sort of thing. The building, she mentioned that the building needs new lighting work, it needs upgrading, so it's her role to apply for the financing to do that. And she said they're working through the issues of solar, which obviously is not as straightforward as it seems. On a daily basis, the director's job is to look after exhibitions and the public program. Long term, there's a redevelopment proposal to be worked on. Jane's next point was, what do you need to be good at to be a director? And the first thing she said was writing. Writing is very important. You've got to have good writing skills because you're doing it all the time. Business, you've got to have good business skills. You've got to understand how to run a business. You've got to understand how to maximise your returns, get the most for your money, and to minimise your losses, because some things are going to be loss-making, so what's the risk management there and making the losses as small as possible? You need to be good at advertising and sponsorship. The Shire looks after the budget for advertising and sponsorship. The director's job with the people around her is to work out who is their audience and how do you best spend your advertising dollar drawing that audience into the gallery on a regular basis. At the National Gallery of Victoria, we didn't have a talk from a director because the director's job there is quite huge and overarching. In fact, the director administers a lot of directors underneath them. So our talk started off with explaining the role of the director as being answerable to the trustees. The trustees are like the board that governs the gallery, and they are interested people who give up their time to be on that trustees board. The trustees, then are answerable to the Minister for the Arts, the Victorian Minister for the Arts, who's then answerable to the government of the day, who's then answerable to the people in an election. Underneath the director is the assistant director, then the deputy director, then the executive manager, and then the business manager. So there's a whole structure, hierarchy of people that direct the gallery, and it's left up to many people because the job is so big. To understand why the job at the National Gallery of Victoria is so big and why it takes a team to run the gallery, not just a few people like it does at the MPRG, let's look at some of the figures, and these are available in their annual report. First of all, the number of visitors on an annual basis, 2.2 million according to the last report. Acquisitions, the number of exhibitions, 46. The number of acquisitions, 2. Not too sure what that means, but exhibitions, 46. That's a load of exhibitions. The scope of the gallery, $68.2 million in operation cost. Now, that can't be handled by just one person like a director. It's too much responsibility. It has to be spread. So there's a web behind the operations of the director, and that involves 200 staff that the director is directly responsible for, or actually the trustees and the minister and the government are directly responsible for. So 2 public galleries, 2 very different ways of directing and operating, dependent on size, dependent on budget, and dependent on their place, cultural place in Victoria.